Welcome to Ukraine today, where we are joined in the newsroom by Irish businessman Paul Niland. Paul, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me in.
Could you start by telling us what originally brought you to Ukraine?
That's easy. I have some Ukrainian friends, and they kept telling me how beautiful their country was and inviting me to come and visit, and eventually I agreed. And it took a while for me to come, because I really thought that Ukraine was going to be very similar to other parts of the former Soviet Union, and I couldn't have been more wrong. From the day that I arrived here, I love this country. I felt the atmosphere and the energy.
So you came as a businessman, or you came as a tourist?
No, back then I was involved in financial services. I used to work with wealthy individuals and create investment portfolios for them, and that was what I was doing. But quite soon after that, I was working with one chap who asked me what I knew about real estate investment funds. My answer was, what do you want to know? And he said, I want to know how to establish one. And so he and I worked together then, and we created something called the Primeros Property Fund, which was to be the first real estate investment fund for Ukraine. So people could have indirect investments into the Ukrainian real estate market without them needing to be hands-on investors, without them needing to be direct investors. And in doing that project, I saw a lot of what the problems were for Ukraine in attracting foreign investment, because there was always something that was wrong. There was always something that was an excuse. And I'm going back now to 2004, 2005, when we were doing that project. And the next thing that happens is Tymoshenko gets fired. The next thing that happens is Putin turns off the gas. There was always something that was happening that was an obstacle, not unreasonably, to foreign investors coming in here.
What would you say were some of the key obstacles for attracting foreign investment?
Well, those couple of examples that I've just mentioned, but also things like there not being a reliable rule of law system. I'll give an example. After we were unsuccessful in launching Primeros, my then business partner and I, who's still a good friend to this day, we were working on attracting direct investment, and he was walking down Kreshchatyk one evening with an investor that was looking at buying a very, very large shopping mall here in Kiev. And it was a lot of money. It would have been a great investment into Ukrainian real estate and an investment into Ukraine on many levels, not just the money, but also the expertise and the knowledge and management of these properties. They were stopped by a policeman who heard them speaking English, and this policeman said, "I want to see your documents." And the investor, not used to the way that things work here, he wasn't carrying his passport with him, and the problem was made to go away with $100. And the investor returned back to the UK the next day, and the due diligence was almost complete on the acquisition, the legal due diligence, and so the report was sent, and there was no response. And so a couple of days later, my business partner followed up and said, I haven't heard from you, is everything okay? And the simple answer was, no, I've decided not to go ahead. He said, I don't feel safe investing $100 million into a country where I can't walk down the street without having to pay a cop a $100 bribe. So the short-sightedness and just the blatant corruption of a policeman looking for a bribe cost Ukraine $100 million in foreign direct investment. One example,
So what definite change have you seen post-Euromaidan, which has provided benefit for your business?
Well, that business that I had no longer exists, unfortunately. It was another casualty of the economic situation. I have a new business, in fact, that we're opening up, which is something that's very exciting and very interesting. But really, what are the biggest changes? The biggest changes, I would say, are the accountability of the post-Yanukovych authorities. They communicate what they're doing. They're more open than any that we've ever seen. But it's a fresh face. It's not that boring grey post-Soviet that we had during the Yanukovych era. Things are a lot fresher now, and accountability is one of the key things really that's changed.
So it goes without saying the last 18 or 20 months have been a very challenging time for Ukraine. As an expatriate, how would you say the expatriate community has responded to this challenging time?
I think we need to split it into two sections. One, because you say the last 18, 20 months. One is during Euromaidan, when the protests were ongoing. and the other one is post-Euromaidan and what's happened since. One of the actions that I was involved in was something that we called a flag march, where simply a group of us decided to go for a walk through Maidan bearing the flags of our home countries to show people that they had support, that the international community supported them. And the first week that we did this was maybe 9 flags and 15 people. The second week that we did it was maybe 15 flags and 25 people. But the reactions that we got as we walked through Maidan were humbling, and at times people would applaud, but it was them that deserved the applause. It was them that was standing up, that was making a stand against corruption and against authoritarianism and demanding democracy, which is their absolute right. You know, after that, in fact, and after the period that Yanukovych fell, if you remember the weeks that followed the end of the revolution, were still very tense times here. And so the flag marches continued, but with the inspiration of a few other people that got involved, it turned into something that was quite huge. And I think the largest turnout that we had was 140 people, with something like 90 different flags. So all of the expatriates from lots of different countries, from Kiev, they were all involved, and it was a great show of support for the Ukrainian people, and a demonstration of admiration for what they did, because it was tough. It was very, very hard. Afterwards, I think everybody really has been involved in one way or another in looking at ways of helping the war effort, right? Because Yanukovych left the state coffers empty, and so we had a situation, an armed situation that began in the east of the country, and brave men went to go and fight to defend the territorial integrity of their country, but they went with nothing, because the army had been gutted. And it had no budget, and so people came up with different ways to raise money. And I know that a lot of the expatriates have been involved in lots of different ideas and initiatives to do that, to show support, again, to show support for our hosts, for the people that we live among and respect.
Could you just tell us a little about your most recent venture and how that's related to the situation in Ukraine?
The idea initially came up with one single phrase, with one thing that we wanted to be able to allow people to communicate a statement through their email addresses. And as the programmers began work on making this reality, we realized that we could apply it to absolutely anything. So, for example, you care about the environment. Your email address could be @curbclimatechange. People that care about Ukraine, their email address can be @ukrainianpatriot.com. People have an email address which is research kills cancer, or supporting AIDS awareness. We're enabling people to communicate something that they care about.
So it shows people that you're communicating with that you support whatever cause, for example, Ukrainian patriots. Does this also benefit the army in any way?
Yeah, exactly. We charge a small registration fee, which is, I mean, it's €1, but 50% of every registration fee goes to the army via the Ukrainian Freedom Fund. We selected Ukrainian Freedom Fund because they're a good organization. They're audited by PwC, for example, so they're very transparent. If you think that 50 cents isn't going to make a difference, well, maybe 50 cents isn't going to make a difference. But when there's 1 million people who are using an email address, which is @ukrainianpatriot.com, that's now $500,000, right? That's a lot of money. And so it's, if you like, it's like a hybrid with crowdfunding. A group of people come together and make small individual contributions to a cause, but it adds up.
Paul, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me.
Now we return to the news.